Hi guys, how are you all doing? So in today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing us how to create a database, as you can see from my screen, how to create a schema, how to import data, how to, view your tables, and most importantly, EDA in SQL. So right now, we're going to start by taking a look at our data. Then after that, we're going to then create a database and create a schema and then import our data set. So let's just get started for that. So welcome back guys, and what we can see right now is our customer table. This is Excel and this is our customer table. So because it's a bank data set, we have customer table and transaction table differently because we have to normalize that because there can be loads of transactions from a particular customer, so it wouldn't make sense if every single name is recurring. So this is what our customer table looks like. And as you can see, we have the customer ID, the name, the account number, the account type, gender, the date the account was opened, the product, and the state of residence. All right. So now let's just quickly take a look at the transaction table. And so this is the transaction table. We can see the transaction ID and the customer ID because we're going to be joining these tables using the customer ID. We have the transaction date, the transaction type, was it a debit transaction or a credit transaction, the amount, the channel they used, did they make this transaction through mobile app or web, or they used card, and the currencies. So we have naira, pounds, and dollars. Okay, so now we're done with this. I just wanted us to, study the data a bit. So what we're working with is 20 customers and 500 transactions. That's what is in this data set. All right. So the first thing we're going to do now is to go back to our SQL, and we're just going to open a new query. I've done all of this before, so we're just going to open a new query. And let me just pull this right here. We have to create a database right now. Okay, so that's the first thing we'll do. Let me just comment that. Let me write the comments. So creating database is a really easy one. All you have to just do is write create database, and what is the name of the database you want to give it. So let's just give it bank projects. Just use a semicolon and execute this, and you will see that your database will be created. I've not connected. So can you see command completed successfully? Now we have a database called bank projects. In order to use this database, you can come here and say use bank project. As you can see, it's here. So bank projects, we're just going to click that, and this is what we have. Just run it and execute, and you would see command completed successfully. So this place, available databases side, immediately changed to bank projects. All right. If you don't want to use the code, you can just easily delete that, and you can just come here, just click the arrow, and you're going to see all the databases you have, and you click on whichever one you want. Either way, it works. So the next thing we want to do now is we want to create a schema. Let's create a schema called banks. Create schema banks. So let's just run this, execute. Command has been completed successfully. So now we have our schema. The next thing we want to do is we want to import our data sets. Now, in order to import data sets, is very easy. All you need to do is to come to the database that you're using. So let's just look for banks data projects. This is bank projects, not projects. So let's look for bank projects. If it has not shown here, just refresh it so it shows. Okay. Okay, now we can see bank projects. All you need to do is just right click here, come to your task, go to import flat file. All right, so now we can see this wizard is open. Click on next. You're going to be asked the location for the import. You browse on where, and this place, it gives you an opportunity to name your table, right? So I'm just going to name my table customer table, and the DBO, which is the schema I'm going to use. I'm not going to use DBO because DBO is the default one, but we created schema. We created a schema and I'm going to use what we created, which is banks. So I'm just going to go to next. Oh, it's open on the Excel. That's why this error is here. So let's just close the tables that we've opened. Okay, so now let's click OK and go to next. So we can preview what our data set looks like. So we're just going to go to next. And now this place is also important because if you're working with real life data sets, you would want to be careful of the data type you're using for performance, for storage, for a lot of things. So we're not doing that now. We'll just go to next and we're going to go to finish. Now you can see success. Our data has been successfully inserted. Now we're just going to close this and go back to our projects. And when we go to the table under our projects, we're going to see our bank.customer. So this is the schema and this is the table. All right, let's go get our second data set, which is the transaction table, because we're going to do EDA with all of that. Go back to tags, import flat file, just the same thing we did. We're just going to be doing that now. All right, so now we have our first table. Okay, so we can see we have our customer table and our transaction table successfully inserted. The next thing we want to do now is we want to start, taking a look at what this table is about. Although you've seen it in Excel, but let's see it in SQL. Select star. This star means all from. So what is the table name? Banks.customer. You know what? Let me just come here, copy this, Ctrl+C, come here, paste it. So this is our table name. Now we're just going to run these and see. Okay, so this is what our table looks like. So let's just go do the same thing for our transaction table. It's good practice to comment on what you're doing so that the next person reading your codes can easily understand it. Okay, so let's go look at transaction table. Come here and copy this, paste it. Let's just copy the name of the transaction, Ctrl+C, and paste it. Now let us go look at this transaction table, and you can see our transaction tables. Now the next thing we want to do is to check the sum of our transactions. As you can see, transaction amount, so we want to know what the sum is. All right, so I'm just going to paste my code right here, and this is the sum transaction type. We want to see the transaction type and the sum. That means we want to see it by credit and by debit. So what we did is we were selecting that column, that's the credit and debit column, as you can see here, and the name of the column is transaction type. We're selecting it and we're selecting transaction amount. Okay, but we are summing up this transaction amount and we are aliasing it as value from the bank transaction, which is this table, and we are grouping by transaction type. Now, this group by any any column in your select statement that has an aggregate function. Aggregate functions are sum, average, count, mean, max, all of those things are aggregate functions. So once you have columns in the select statement that has this aggregate function, you have to group by the ones that don't have it. Do you understand? You have to group by the ones that don't have it. For example, if you have 10 column names here and just one, which is this transaction amount, has the aggregate function, you have to group by the remaining 9. So you have to put the remaining 9 columns here for your query to run. Okay, so we're just going to run this, and you can see all the credit transaction that has happened amounted to all of this amount, and the debit transaction amounted to all of this amount. But it does look like the debit transaction is more than the credit transaction. Okay, now we can see our sum by transaction type. So the next thing we want to see is total transaction by month and year. All right, so if you have taken a look at our table, you're going to see that our table consists of, let me execute this. You're going to see that our table consists of transaction days dating from 2022 to 2023. I think April 2022 to 2023, but let us just confirm that. Let's see the minimum date and the maximum date. So we're going to see select transaction, select minimum transaction date, from our transaction table. So, okay, you know what? This is the date, but let's name this very well as minimum mean dates, and we're going to name this as max dates. All right, so let's just see this. So you can see our minimum date is April 4, 2002, and our maximum date is August 29th, 2023. So this is actually the date range for this transaction data that we have right now. Now, we want to see the total transaction by month and year, because we would have 2002 and 2003. For example, now April is going to occur twice because there is April 2002 and April 2003. That is why the year is important. All I'll do is write the select statement, and what are we selecting? We want to get the transaction date. So now we have the transaction date, but it's not going to do. We're just going to be seeing this date like this, but this is not what we want. We want a situation whereby we're just going to see the month and the year, like April 2022 or April 2023, something like that. So we have to format this date column. All right, so in order to do that, we're just going to use the format function, and we're going to put this in a bracket. So what are we formatting our date as? We're going to use a comma as well. We want to format it as the month, as month and year. So it's just going to give us the cumulative of each month in whatever year it falls in. So what we want is, we're just going to put a quote, and now we want the month, which is MMMM. That is, if you want this to come out in words, like if you want it to come out as January, like JANUARY, UARY. Okay, you're going to use these 4 M's. But if you want it to come as O1, you're going to use 2 M's. Okay, and we're just going to do this and use YYY. This is the format. Okay, so this YYY will make it come out as 2023. We're going to close the bracket, and we're going to alias this as date. So we're going to give it a comma, and the next thing we want to see is our transaction amount. Okay, so let's just copy this, some transaction amount as value, because that's actually what our next column will be. So now we have this. What is the next thing? Where are we calling this thing from our transactions table? So this is very important. I'm just going to copy this and paste, because it's the same thing from our transaction table. And you can remember what I said here. Once you use an aggregate function, you want to group by that. You want to group by the other column that does not have an aggregate function. So in order to do that, we're just going to group by the transaction date. That means you're going to copy every single thing from here. Okay, so we're just going to copy that, and we're going to write our group by and paste that. So now let's see this. So now we can see April 2022, 2023. You can see August, you can see December, and all of that. You can see all the dates. Okay, say you want to see just 2022, right? You want to see just 2022. So where the transaction dates, let's just copy transaction dates and paste it right here. Where transaction date is let's just say between January 1, 2022 and December 30, 2023, right? We don't really have anything. Where transaction date between 01, let's not forget to use our quotes, between 01 January, so JAN, normally is the first 3 characters, 2022, and 12 what they call it, 31st December. So we're going to use the first 3 characters as well, 2022. Okay, so this is what we want to see. We want to see everything by 2022. So let's execute this, and we can see all our months by 2022. You can see April, August to December, yada yada yada. You see everything. If you also want to see it by 2023, you just do the same thing and edit the transaction date. Okay, so now I'm also going to show you something. So we can easily just comment this out, since we don't want to see anything by 2022. So now let me run this first of all. Okay, this was what we had before, right? We want to know the month that did the most value, and just want to see them on top. Okay, so let's just see, because that's what stakeholders we even want to see as well. So DE, so we're just going to group by this, and we can see December 2022 did a lot. You can see one, I think this is like 1.8 or 18, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So this is like 18M. We can see April, followed by April 2022. Then we can see July 2023 did a lot. You can see March, so you can actually get insight from this particular query right here. So the next thing we want to do is we want to see transactions that happened 2023. So the idea behind this is, say you work in a financial institution, because this is a bank project, right? So you work in this bank and you're to send a daily report. Okay, so now you want to send a daily report to your team lead or your whatever stakeholder it is you have. You want to show them what happened on August 29th. Say you're in August 30 now. okay, August 30, 2023. So you have to do a report for the previous day to show them, right? So the previous day happens to be August 29. So now the first thing you want to do is you want to even tell them, okay, oh, this is the transactions that happened the previous day. This is the sum of transaction, the sum of our credits, the sum of our debits, and our net profit. Count of customers that transacted on 2023 08 29. Okay, so let's see that. We're just going to write the select statement, and we're going to select count. Remember, this is an aggregate function. We're going to select count customer ID and close the brackets. And this is supposed to be in small letter. So once we close the ID, we have to alias it. What are we aliasing it as? We're going to write alias customer count. So let's just leave it our customer count. And we're going to just use the comma, and we're going to also get the transaction date. So now we have these two things. The next thing we want to do is we want to count from a particular table. So what table are we counting from? Our start table, which is the transaction table. So let's just copy this and paste it right here. Now, the last thing we want to do, not the last thing, but the next thing we're going to do is, now we've selected this from this particular table. God, I did not put the from statement. Okay, from this particular table, you cannot just leave it like this. You have to put a where clause, right? So we're going to say where the transaction date is on that particular date we want to get. Okay, so we're just going to write where transaction date is equal to, just put the equal to sign, go get your quotes, and you're going to say what? 29 08 is August, so AUG is fine, and we're going to say 2023. You close your quote. Now we're almost there. The next thing you want to do is you want to group by, because remember I said if you use any aggregate function in your select statement, you have to group by the next or the other columns that don't have aggregate function. So group by the transaction table. So let's just copy that and paste it. So let us see how many people transacted in this small bank that has just 20 customers. Let's see how many people transacted. Oh, we have just 3 customer count. Okay, only 3 people transacted in this bank on the 29th of August 2023. Okay, so this is what you want to first show your stakeholders. These are the number of people that transacted with us on this particular date. Now you can start saying this is the debit and the credit, right? So let me just rename this thing very well. Let's just say we are doing a daily report. Okay, so now let's get the debit transaction. So in order to get debit transaction, we're just going to select the transaction type and transaction date. So I'm just going to come here and get this select statement. I'm just going to copy all of this because we need everything actually. Okay, so we are selecting transaction type and we are summing up the transaction. Okay, from this table, then we are going to come get our where clause here, copy that. So we're selecting this where the date is on this particular date because this is our daily transaction. Okay, and we're grouping by transaction type. So now let's just run this and see the credit and debit transaction that happened. Okay, look at the credit transaction, 665,000, and the debit transaction is 405,000. So guys, we want to get our net profit now. So what we can do is, there are two ways of getting the net profit. You can get that by using the subquery and CTE. CTE is called common table expressions, and I'm just going to show you how to do that. So first things first, let's use the subquery. The first thing we want to write is the select. We're going to select case when transaction type is equal to credit, then we want to get the transaction amount. Else we want to get what? 0, and we're just going to end this expression. So what are we going to name this as? Let's name this as what? Total credit. The next thing we want to do here is just to put the sum, because we want to get the sum of the transaction amount that has credit. The sum of the transaction amount that is what? Credit. That's what we want to get. Now, we're also going to put a comma. We are going to come here and also write another one, but let's just copy this and paste it. Now, we're getting the transaction amount when the transaction type is what? Is debit. Okay, so when the transaction type is debit, we want to get transaction amount, and we are going to name it what? We're going to name it total debit, just as we did for this one. So we're almost done. Then where are we calling this from? We are calling it from our table. So let's just write our from. I'm just going to come here and copy the table name. So we're calling this from our transaction table, where, because remember this is a daily report, so we have to put the where clause to filter off to filter the date. So where transaction date is equals to we're still working with the 29th. Don't forget to put your quote. 29th of August 2023. Hi guys, so I wrote this code, but I didn't know it wasn't recording. My apologies for that. So please take a pause and look at the query, and as promised, this query is for the two method, which is the subquery and the CTE. So please take a pause and just read the query. You definitely understand it. Thank you.